I want to close with an issue that has been very much on the minds of people over the last 24 or 48 hours with the announcement that in Rockland County and in Orange County, there have been some proposed placements of those individuals, migrants, who are assembly seekers and have been moved to New York. And now the city of New York, stressed to be able to handle them, has sought places outside of the city to house them. But I do want to highlight that we are, as an executive team, going through the issue in some detail. We're discussing with the various operating departments, our Department of Public Safety, our Department of Social Services, other relevant departments as to what Westchester's response can and should be. We have not received yet, as Rockland and Orange has, specific example of a placement somewhere in Westchester County. That is, as we're speaking today, there is an anticipation that that dialogue is coming, but it has not happened yet as of this moment in time. And I'm mindful of what my colleagues in Rockland and Orange have said about this. And I do want to go backwards to go forward. So I think it bears a discussion of greater depth a little later in the week, perhaps at the end of the week when we have our response plan together of what we intend to do, and share that with you and share that with the Board of Legislators. But to talk about this issue, because the issue is going to be framed in ways that are highly emotional and for which people, their political ideologies, their philosophies are very much going to be in play. I understand certainly that we've had a border problem at our southern border, Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, California, for an extended period of time. We have countries to the south of us, from Mexico through Central America and Latin America, that are in various stages of poverty, various stages of political upheaval, and that the everyday life for the everyday person in those countries is very problematic. We have many countries in this world that suffer that, and in Europe and in other locations, there's immigrant crisis that comes out of other continents, out of the Middle East and out of sub-Saharan Africa, out of parts of Asia, into other developed countries. So we're not alone in dealing with this. As a country that has had some economic success and certainly political freedom, we have positioned ourselves, and we are, in fact, an attractive place for people to come to try to seek to live their lives. We've had a border problem for a long time, and I remember in the mid-1980s, Ronald Reagan, President of the United States, when he issued a blanket amnesty for all those who had entered the United States without legal documentation. President Ronald Reagan did that back in the mid-1980s. But that, of course, did not address the problem for the future. It addressed the problem for the immediate period of time. And it is clear that we do not have what we need to have, which is a national policy properly debated and implemented by the federal government. And the reason why we don't have that is because we have a deep division in this country over the role that the United States should take in dealing with immigration into this country. And this is not anything new. This is nothing new. What we're facing today in terms of placement of immigrants is not the first time our administration in the county has dealt with it. Back in 2018, then the President Donald Trump administration placed 1,000 immigrant children in 4 different locations across Westchester County. And in that placement, we inquired, because we have legally the requirement to ensure public safety, public health safety. The local governments have responsibility for fire safety. And we were told at that time by the Federal Department of HHS that we, as local officials, would have butt out. We had no role to play. We had no supervisory role, that the federal government was in charge. Now, many people forget, either circumstantially or conveniently, that happened 5 years ago under the Trump administration, and that was a permanent placement in this county that lasted for some indefinite period of time before they were removed. We also had quite the debate in this county in 2021 and 2022 when the current Biden administration was sponsoring relocation flights, resettlement flights from the border and stopping off in various locations. And they used Westchester County Airport as a portal to deliver some of these asylum seekers and some of these immigrants that were here. And they were ferried out to different locations. And we had quite a public argument, saw all the comments on Facebook about how they were staying here in Westchester County. They were staying at the Rye-Town Hilton. They weren't. They were staying at Arrowwood. They weren't. They were staying and winding up at Costco in downtown Port. They weren't. But in each of those different cases, the anger that some people in the society have over the immigrant population coming into the United States is clear, and it's palpable. Certainly President Donald Trump was very clear. His response to the immigrant crisis at our southern border would be to build a wall and to keep those immigrants out, to not let them in under any circumstances. As we've gone through the current problems and policies, or lack of a coherent policy at the federal level. Those who have come seeking asylum at the border have been placed at the border while their cases are being reviewed. And these are thousands of people, 7,000 a day, seeking asylum in the United States. And Governor Abbott of Texas, at some level Governor DeSantis of Florida, made the decision to send some of those people on buses to the city of New York, also to Washington, D.C. I think he sent a bus to Martha's Vineyard, those areas that they determined were sufficiently liberal and then could therefore handle the immigrants that they were under stress to handle. And there's no question that in Texas they have a crisis. It's a serious crisis. They are the largest portion of the border between Mexico and the United States, and that is the portal by which people from all South American, Latin American countries that are stressed and are leaving Venezuela, are leaving potentially Colombia, Nicaragua, Honduras, wherever there's economic poverty and wherever there's political upheaval, they move out of those areas and they move toward the United States. It's my understanding that New York City has received 50,000 of these individuals over the course of the last few months. 50,000 additional people coming to the front door seeking entry in New York City because they've been shipped up here from the Texas and the Florida area and some of the other ones. So without that national policy, we have a gridlock. We have a portion, and it does define itself by political party and political ideology. I try to be as apolitical as I can be in a setting like this, that there are people who believe that there should be some path to deal with these immigrants and change that, a path to citizenship, a path to workership here. And there's some that believes we should not let immigrants into this nation, period, walls up, and that should be the response. That debate in Washington has frozen us from having any kind of a rational policy, and so it falls to state governments and now local governments to deal with the aftermath of that. Let me remind you, as I said earlier, this is not new. In the 1840s, there was a great emigration from Ireland to the United States. The Irish immigrants who came here were not welcomed. They were not treated as equal residents coming to this country. They spoke English, but they were viewed to be an underclass of people coming into this country. There were signs in store windows that would say, "Nina, no Irish need apply." It was prejudice against people coming from Ireland, and it was felt that because they came here with a different religion. This country was primarily Protestant. The Irish that were coming were Catholic, that they were coming with an alien faith, and that they would not fit into the America that had been created by our founding fathers in 1776. Even though it said we professed that all men are created equal, in the 1840s the Irish were not seen as equal. In the 1880s, when there was a great Italian immigration from southern Italy coming to the United States, they too were not treated with open arms. They were accepted here in the country, and in the 1840s and the 1880s, there was a need for raw labor to open up the West, to open up parts of this country. The industrialization phase of the American experience was underway. But the Italians who came here were not welcomed. They were seen as an alien people. They were treated because they had swarthier Mediterranean skin as unlike those who were here already, who were Northern Europeans. And I might add that some of the Irish that assimilated from the 1840s were prejudiced against the Italians who followed them in. The phrase WAP was attached as a derogatory word to Italian immigrants, WAP standing for without papers, because some of those who came without papers. In that era of emigration came my great-grandfather, Donato Mainero, from the town of Benevento in Italy. He came here, worked here for a while, went back to Italy, married his betrothed, and they came to the United States and had 13 children here. One of those children was my grandfather, Giuseppe, and of course, in due time, their daughter met up with the grandson of William Fleming Latimer, Stan Latimer, and of course, those are my parents, and that is how I came to Westchester County. In the 1900s, we had an emigration from Eastern Europe, primarily Jewish, from the persecution and the pogroms of Eastern Europe and Russia, and in some of the countries that we read about now, Ukraine and Belarus, Romania and Hungary and Czechoslovakia. This is before the Holocaust of the 1940s under the Nazis. There was persecution, and the Jewish population came. And when they came, they were prejudiced against. They were viewed as the other. They came with a religion that wasn't a Christian faith. And how could these people come to this country and be part of the American experience? This has been a part of the American experience, even with the Statue of Liberty standing in the harbor. and the poem by Emma Lazarus that lifts the lamp beside the golden door. And those immigrants came, but when they arrived here, they were treated not as equal neighbors and friends. Oftentimes, we have to deal with issues on a practical governmental standpoint. There's a dynamic of this issue which is moral. There's a dynamic of it which is practical implementation. And we need to know as a county government, Ken, myself, and the executive team, we have to know if immigrants come here, what's the legal basis for them being here, and if they are here, what is the cost for their time here? Who's going to pay for that cost? Because the county government does not have the resources to be able to handle this on an infinite level, nor does the city of New York. We need to know the timeline, how long, and over what circumstances of services are intended to be provided. Because under current requirements and laws, we cannot provide federally sponsored programs to people who are here who are not treated as American citizens. That's not a possibility. If they're undocumented, whether they're here legally or they're awaiting the adjudication of their case for asylum, we don't know that. And I have a responsibility as county executive for my time in this job. I have a fiduciary responsibility to the people of this county and the budget of this county and the taxation level of this county, and I have a responsibility to make sure that people are protected in this county. So security is an issue, and safety, public safety is an issue. These are all important issues. These are the secular elements of this decision. As our executive team meets to discuss what this means, we'll have dialogue with whomever we have to have dialogue with. We'll talk to our fellow counties. We'll talk to the city of New York. We'll talk to the federal government to try to get a handle on this. But let me add one other point in terms of the secular situation. I asked our county attorney, John Noda, to opine on this decision of whether or not I had the authority, or any Westchester County executive has the authority under executive order to create emergency declaration that relates to this. And I have a memo from him. I won't read it to you, but they identify under the law, the existing state executive law, that those items that represent a disaster, rioting, catastrophe, or similar public emergency are the basis for which an emergency order can be created. So I am advised that I do not have the power to deal with this issue using executive authority and executive emergency authority, and that is the interpretation of the law as I have received it from our county attorney, who has given us sound advice and so many other things. These are the secular sides of this. But before I close, I want to touch on an element that goes beyond the secular into the spiritual. I recognize that we all have our own faith beliefs. We are attached to the faiths that we are attached to, if we have a faith. We may not have one. And in the American experience, if you read the Founding Fathers, they indicated that there would be a separation between church and state because what they did not want was the state, the government, to impose a specific religion upon all those people in the country. They wanted individuals to have the freedom to worship as they saw fit. That is the basic purpose for the separation of church and state. It does not mean that we do not take religious philosophy into our everyday lives or into the actions that we take, but that we do not mandate that set of religious beliefs, because we have here Christians and Jews and those who adhere to Islam and those who believe in the Hindu faith and the Buddhist faith and many other faiths, traditions, and some who have no faith tradition at all, and whatever their sense of belief system is what you practice in a free country where you have free speech and you have free practice of religion. But I'm influenced by my religion, and I will tell you, as a Christian, as a Roman Catholic Christian, I am often lectured to by fellow members of my faith. They're unhappy with certain positions that I hold on certain key issues, which they feel the church's positions are very clear on. And the church has taken a position on some of these issues. And they believe that the government of our country should follow those positions. We should make things illegal and not accept them and not tolerate them. We should set up barriers to not accept certain behavior which we are taught is inappropriate behavior. Well, we're taught a lot of things in the context of church. We're taught a lot of things in the context of our sacred scriptures, the Quran, and certainly the Bible. And the Bible, in parts, are equally sacred to both the Jewish and Christian communities, and in some part, just to those of us in the Christian community. But we have each week in our various faith traditions, and on those occasions when I go to Mass on a daily basis, which I do on occasion, we hear readings, sacred readings, that teach us directly as to what our attitude should be over things. They very rarely talk about those two major issues that I talk about, if ever. Those are modern-day interpretations of holy faith, which are established by established churches. But let me read to you what is from the Bible in the New Testament, from Matthew, the book of Matthew, one of the Gospels of the New Testament, and this verse, which I think is very instructive in terms of what we have to add to the discussion when we talk about economics, when we talk about logistics, when we talk about where the money is coming from and how we're going to handle security. I read, "When the Son of Man shall come in his glory, and all the holy angels with him, then he shall sit upon the throne of glory. And before him shall be gathered all nations, and he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd divides his sheep from the goats. And he shall set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on his left. Then shall the king say unto them on his right hand, Come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came unto me. Then shall the righteous answer him, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry, or needing of food, or thirsty, or gave thee drink? When we saw you a stranger, when did we take you in? When were you naked? When did you require shelter? When were you sick or in prison? When we came unto you. And then the king shall answer and say to them, Truthfully I say unto you, inasmuch as you have done it unto the least of these my brothers, you've done it unto me. And then he shall say to those on the left hand, Depart from me, ye cursed, into everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food. I was thirsty, and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and yet you did not take me in. I was naked, and you didn't clothe me. I was sick. I was in prison, and you visited me not. Then shall they answer him also, Lord, when did I see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or naked or sick in prison, and did not minister unto you? Then he shall say to them, Truthfully I say to you, inasmuch as ye did it not to one of the least of these, you did it not to me. And then these shall go away into everlasting punishment, and the righteous into life eternal. This is what I'm taught as part of my faith. And when my friends care about my spiritual future long after my political future is over, they will minister to me about positions that I take that they feel have put me in the wrong side of eternity. And I say unto them the same things that I've just read. There's a story of the Good Samaritan who stops along the side of the road to help a person who had fell into robbers. And the Samaritan, who is a stranger when the parable is told, he's a stranger, he's not from that home country. The Samaritan stops and handles the compassion needed for that individual. And Jesus says in this particular parable, who is my neighbor? Who is your neighbor? The person who stopped and gave you help. Right now, I would not trade, having been born in Mount Vernon, New York, for having been born in a rural poverty section of South America or Central America. I would not trade having the opportunity to have a public education and have the opportunity to go to college, have the opportunity to find work and have a life, a better life than my parents had. That is an opportunity granted to me by the stroke of luck by which I was born in the United States of America to the grandson and the great-grandson of people who were born in Europe, by the stroke of luck. That good fortune is not given to many other people. They live in countries where there's political turmoil, where there are drug cartels, where they will take your children from you and turn them into drug runners and turn them into human shields for their illegal activities. You have governments that, whatever our governmental problems are, do nothing to help you and press you into service, and worse. And worse. I can understand why a person might walk 1,000 miles, walk 1,000 miles with children, to come to the border, to have an opportunity for a better life. That is what Donato Mainero, with his wife Josefina, came from Italy to come to this country in the 1880s, 1890s. That is why my Irish antecedents came to this country. And that is why so many of us came to this country. Human compassion has to be met with pragmatism. We must understand that the United States cannot solve the problems of the world. We do not have the resources to solve the problems of the world. We cannot be there for every single person on this planet. But we cannot turn a blind eye either. We can't say, you don't look like me, and therefore I want nothing to do with you. Your problems are your problems. Go back to where you came from. Suffer the gangs, suffer the poverty, and suffer the torture. That's not an acceptable response either. So we have to try to find a way, as human beings that are fallible, to find a way through this. Ideally, we find a way through this at the national government, so that those of us in local government, the county executives and the town supervisors, can work within a system of resources and some guarantees and protections by which we can help those who need help for the time that they need it, and we can protect the residents who are here, who are our responsibility. We'll talk more about this a little later in the week. But I ask you to think about what I've said. These words aren't mine. These are eternal words. I will be long out of this position and long off this planet, and those words will still matter. We have to determine, who are we? Who are we? What do we believe in? And what are we willing to put behind that belief? And if we're not prepared to do that, if we're prepared to speak words of faith and speak words that allude to compassion but do not provide compassion, then we're being dishonest with ourselves. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. Thank you for watching.